Who is Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky? Volodymyr Zelensky is one of the biggest names in news right now. That's because he's currently leading Ukraine through one of their most trying times in decades. The Russian invasion. As you're probably well aware right now, Putin, the Russian leader, has launched a full-scale invasion in Ukraine. World leaders around the globe have pretty much publicly condemned this move. However, even though Biden, Boris Johnson, and others have come out and said they aren't happy with this, they aren't necessarily throwing their troops at this war to help Ukraine out. They are assisting in other ways, but it's largely up to Ukraine to deal with this. Which also means that it's largely up to Volodymyr Zelensky. So who is this guy who is all of a sudden fighting for his country's freedom? Where did he come from, and most importantly, is he capable of leading his country through this extremely dark and trying time? Well, for starters, he was born in 1978 to Jewish parents. His father was a professor of cybernetics and computing, and his mother was an engineer, so safe to say they were both very smart. His early life saw him do very well in school. He learned English and received a grant to go and study in Israel. He never actually went because his father wouldn't let him, but he did earn a law degree from Kryvyi Rih Institute of Economics. Law wasn't his true passion though, and he never actually pursued a career in that field. Instead, Zelensky was a bit of a joker. When he was 17 years old, he joined the KVN, which is a comedy group in Ukraine. He participated with this group and other comedic groups for quite a while and saw a lot of success. Eventually, he gained enough of a name for himself that in the early 2000s he could start producing TV shows for some Ukrainian channels, which then launched his career on the big screen. Love in the Big City and Love in the Big City 2 saw Zelensky really thrive on the screen and saw some decent success. This led him to perform in some other roles, which actually included him doing the voice for Paddington Bear in the Ukrainian versions of the film. These were just a few of his most notable credits, but he's definitely been around the block when it comes to film and television. So how is it possible that somebody who was voicing a cute little bear in 2017 is now leading a nation through an invasion 5 years later? Well, his political career is certainly a bit of an anomaly. Public opinion of him was very high based off of his TV and film career, and he used this to launch himself onto the political scene. Wikipedia writes, 6 months before he announced his candidacy for the Ukrainian presidential election in 2019, Zelensky was already one of the frontrunners in opinion polls. After months of ambiguous responses during the Kvartal 95 New Year's Eve evening show on the TV channel 1+1, he announced his candidacy for the election. In doing so, he upstaged the New Year's Eve address of President Petro Poroshenko on that particular channel. This was the beginning of a very unique political campaign where Zelensky largely avoided talk shows because he said he didn't want to just do PR. This strategy paid off, and on April 21st, 2019, he beat out his opponent with an overwhelming 73% of the vote. The first 2 years of his presidency were pretty uneventful considering what's happening right now. He was largely popular with the people though, and other than a minor vacation scandal where Zelensky snuck away for a few days, he hasn't been hit with too much bad press. Fast forward to February 24th of 2022, only 4 days ago, and Zelensky gets hit with the biggest problem he will tackle in his entire life. Putin invades. At this point, Zelensky had been calling out to the world for months, telling them that this was coming and trying to speed up the process of getting into NATO as a way of protecting the country. The admittance to NATO took longer than he wanted though, and as we've seen in the last few days, Russian troops have been storming the country. Before they did this, there were many articles talking about the potential of this invasion, and one thing that they kept coming back to was Zelensky's leadership. Many of the articles that I read were very critical in their opinion of how Zelensky would handle an invasion if it did occur. Many of these critics thought that he would cave under the pressure. This war isn't ending anytime soon, and he could still cave, but so far, he has definitely risen to the occasion. Wikipedia once again says, in the early hours of 26 February, during the most significant assault by Russian troops on the capital of Kiev, the United States government urged Zelensky to evacuate to a safer location and said it stood ready to assist him in such an effort. Zelensky turned down the offer and opted to remain in Kiev with its defensive forces, saying that "The fight is here. I need ammunition, not a ride." Zelensky gained worldwide recognition as the wartime leader of Ukraine during the Russian invasion. Historian Andrew Roberts compared him to Winston Churchill, and he has been described as a national hero in Ukraine. He contributed to the renewed popularity of the salute Slava Ukraini as a symbol of resistance. It's actions like this that will give Ukraine a fighting chance. On paper, they are severely outmanned, outgunned, and at a major disadvantage. This is simply looking at the numbers though and doesn't factor in human spirit and resilience. The only way Ukraine is going to be able to last through something like this is if the entire country rallies behind their leader and fights back against these invaders. By sticking with his people and refusing to flee, he has sent a clear message to the Ukrainian people and to the Russians that they will not back down from this fight. It should also be noted that if the Russians capture Kiev and ultimately find Zelensky, then he will most likely be killed or at the very least imprisoned. It is also believed that Zelensky's handling of the situation so far has rallied the West to go a lot further and faster with their sanctions than they were planning to do. The Russian currency is currently dropping like a stone, and that is large in part to the massive sanctions being imposed on them from some of the huge Western economies. Weapons and arms have also been promised to the Ukrainian people from some nations, something that experts didn't expect to happen. So far, Zelensky is doing everything in his power to give Ukraine a fighting chance and stand up to Russia. There will be a meeting on the 28th of February where the two sides of Ukraine and Russia will discuss certain things. What that meeting will entail and if there's anything either side can do to bring peace is unknown, but at the very least they will be meeting at the table. We're still learning who President Volodymyr Zelensky is as a person and as a leader, but the signs are initially indicating that he might just have what it takes to lead his country through one of their darkest moments. But please let me know in the comments down below what you are thinking about the Ukrainian president so far and any thoughts that you might have on any of the things that we talked about today. Also, please hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching. I've been your host, Nicholas Playlog, and I'll catch you next time.